Welcome to Spotlight Sessions, where we shine a
What's
light
your
on
story?
incredible. What does accessibility mean to you?
What's your mission?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of accessiBe's Spotlight Sessions. My name is Sapir, and I am the host for today's episode. We are here with Kristin Smedley. Kristin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, I'm so happy to be here and have this chat with you on this phenomenal platform. I am Kristin Smedley. I am a co-founder in Thriving Blind Academy, author of the best-selling book Thriving Blind and the new children's book What I Can Be Is Up to Me, speaker, advocate for the blind community. And I still can't believe, my daughter still can't believe this either, that when I do so much work for the blind community now, and so many of my friends are in the blind and visually impaired community, but I had never even met a person that is blind until it was 23 years ago when the first of my two sons was born blind, diagnosed as blind. Both of my sons are blind, and I do have a sighted daughter. So it's been quite an adventure.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to speak with you today. I listened to your TED Talk, and it really is an interesting and exciting story about your family. Can you tell us a little bit about Thriving Blind Academy and what led you to start it?
Well, I'll tell you what, back 23 years ago when I said that my oldest son was diagnosed with a rare blindness and then his brother 3 years later, there was nowhere to turn. So I wrote Thriving Blind, the book, a few years ago to be that thing that I wanted that specialist to hand me. I just needed some kind of hope, some kind of direction. That has now evolved into Thriving Blind Academy, where we are literally that resource for people to come to. It's not a support group; it's a strategies, success-driven group for those that are looking to thrive and not just survive a blindness diagnosis.
Wow, that's great. What really motivated you to begin this whole journey? What was that moment that sparked the whole interest?
Well, I have to tell you, back when Michael was diagnosed, I did not handle the diagnosis well. And to be perfectly honest, I know I'm going to give myself a lot of grace now, all these years later, but I know that it was because the story that was in the world about blindness, there wasn't a lot of detail, there wasn't a lot of information, but the story was based in devastation, isolation, frustration, and that was my life. And then it was my son Michael at 3.5 years old that was basically like, Mom, I have the greatest life ever. I'm going to need some tools to access it. You know, the things that I can't access, I'm going to need some access here. Like, let's go. I've got a big life ahead of me. And I have the inspiration of my boys every single day. And I very well started to coast a little bit once we figured out education and they were doing really well. And it was when I came across the statistics of 70% unemployment rate, 85% of blind kids are dropping out of college. That was actually the fuel that I was like, oh my gosh, as a mom of these kids that I was raising to be so successful, they were going to hit a brick wall that I couldn't control. Right. So I had to figure out how to change that story of blindness to ultimately change those statistics and create opportunities for my boys and everybody just like them.
I love that. You're creating a whole other narrative for your boys, but by doing that, you're also creating a new narrative for the community itself. So that being said, when you hear the word access or accessibility, what comes to your mind?
You know, when I first hear accessibility, it's a right. It is a God-given right that people should have access to the information that everyone has access to, right? It is everyone, not just a chosen few or people that access the world in a way that the majority of the world accesses it, right? It is a God-given right for access. And in this day and age, in 2023, there's no excuse or reason to not have access. We've got all of it at our fingertips. It's now time for everybody to come in on the real story of blindness and access and get out of the way. Stop creating the barriers to it.
Yeah. And retelling that story is such an important part of the whole experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what has been a memorable moment for you? I mean, I'm sure there have been countless because this is part of your family and your family's history, but what has been a memorable experience that has had a lasting impact on you from this whole journey?
Oh my gosh. In terms of, I mean, I'll tell you what, we're in graduation mode right now, right? It's my sighted daughter's about to graduate high school, and everyone all over my news feeds, all the college graduations are happening. And last year, I'm telling you, I did not start this journey well, and it was a battle in elementary school and raising expectations, and you know, you when you're trailblazing, not that I was a full trailblazer because I was following some people ahead of me, but when you're on a path that is very unique, you tend to start looking at yourself like they're looking at me like I'm crazy. Like these two kids that are blind actually are going to achieve as much or more than their sighted peers. Like you start to feel a little bit like second guessing yourself. But I knew, I 100% believed that they would be able to do the things that they wanted to do if they had access to the tools. And then, oh my gosh. And then last year, Michael graduated Penn State University, 2 majors, 2 minors, a certificate program, summa cum laude, in the top 0.5% of 10,000 graduates, when the world had said that was impossible. And then we just took, I didn't know nothing from nothing. I'm like, if I could do this, anybody could do this. We just took one step at a time, advocating, getting the tools that he needed, following his lead of where he was going to go. And he was blowing all those perceptions wide open. But it really sealed the deal for me. And watching him be so happy and comfortable and proud with the white cane in front of him. And then he was chosen as a graduation marshal. And this was the moment that sealed it for me. The world thinks that the blind have to follow the sighted, right? And everything, all the narratives out there can, contribute to that. Michael was a graduation marshal. So in a arena of more than 10, 15,000 people, Michael led the graduation procession with his white cane and a sighted guide and was beaming with joy.
I'm so happy to hear that story, and congratulations to you and your family members for all of the success.
Thanks.
What do you think is something? I love that you start your TED Talk with naming people who are blind, who have achieved massive accomplishments. And I believe your book also does that by highlighting stories of individuals who did not have their vision. So what is one thing you wish people knew about people with disabilities?
Well, first of all, when all things are equal, right? When accessibility is in place, I can tell you from experience and knowing all of the people that I know, and it's a lot of people. When all things are equal and accessibility is in place, I see people with disabilities as actually having an edge over those that have not had adversity. I watch my boys creative problem solve in a split second. They don't come up against a challenge and throw their hands up and wallow in it. They are so well versed in creative problem solving, managing. They actually find it hilarious when there's low expectations. That's kind of like fuel for them to go, okay, watch this. But their teamwork, their communication, the communication skills that they've developed since they were born, simply because of necessity, are just it's incomparable to folks that have not had to do that. So when all things are equal, and like I said, all the tools are there, accessibility is there, the barriers are out of the way, I do see people with disabilities as having a competitive edge over the rest of us.
That's awesome, truly. Uh, and on the flip side of that, what do you think, or what do you wish brands and businesses would do regarding accessibility and inclusion? Do you have a message for the business community?
Honestly, look, we got to meet people where they're at, and people in the business community. I get it. I'm building businesses and nonprofits. You want to know what's in it for you, right? Like, what is in it for you to consider this untapped pool of talent? Well, when you look at the statistics, I mean, a business that hires people with disabilities has a 20%. That's the lowest number. There's other studies that have higher ones, but we'll only just quote the lowest number. 20% higher productivity, profit at the end. Like the business benefits are astronomical. And if businesses don't get on board with this, they're going to be so far behind, because there's people realizing this and they just keep excelling further and further ahead. So I would say if you don't get on this train, you're going to have some big issues later.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's all part of having that initial conversation, making sure that businesses, brands, communities are aware so that we can really come up with some better ideas for how to address accessibility and inclusivity. So my last question for you today is, if everyone could do their one bit to make the world more inclusive, what would you suggest?
You know, a good friend of mine has this question that she says, could you imagine if everybody, because we all come to things with our own background, our own narratives, our own bias, and I get that. And trying to eliminate that is really hard work. However, no matter your background, bias, narrative, story you're telling yourself about other people in front of you, if you went to each person, whether you work with them, see them on the street, you know, whatever, if the question is, how can I help you be successful? That's all you have to say. How can I help you be successful in this project? Or do you, you know, crossing the street if that's what you need? How can I help you be successful? Can you imagine if we all asked each other that instead of running from our stories or, you know?
I think that's so important as well. Thank you so much for sharing. And this has been the end of our episode. So don't forget to hit subscribe and like the video, and tune in for the next episode soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.